Chapter 1886. The expressions of the messengers changed as the Tao Master cried out for divine punishment. Yu Zhitian's mouth twitched as he said worriedly, "Tangzheng, leave quickly." Tangzheng looked at him in astonishment and asked, "Why? Divine punishment isn't a joke." Yu Zhitian hesitated for a moment before reminding him out of goodwill, "Didn't I tell you that I'm already a god? What's there to fear about a mere divine punishment?" Tang Zheng casually said. Looking around, taking in everyone's reaction, he said with interest, "Since you are all so afraid of God's punishment, then I would like to see what this so-called God's punishment is." Everyone looked at him in horror. Some were taking pleasure in his misfortune, while others were curious. Conflicted, Yu Zhitian pushed Tang Zheng and urged, "You really should leave quickly. You won't be able to leave if you're any later." Tang Zheng said with a spurious smile, "Don't be in such a hurry. The show hasn't started yet. How can I leave?" Yu Zhitian's expression froze. Knowing that he couldn't persuade Tang Zheng, he let out a long sigh. The Tao Master was inexplicably excited as he clamored, "Since you don't know life from death, I'll fulfill your wish and let you experience what divine punishment is. I'll let a swindler like you scatter your soul and vanish into thin air." The Tao Master put his palms together and knelt on the ground with a plop, kowtowing toward the sky while muttering an incantation. Tangzheng said in surprise, "What's going on? He's even kneeling down." Yu Zhitian sighed and shook his head. "He's asking for divine punishment." Tang Zheng came to a sudden realization. "Oh, so divine punishment can be invited. Is he asking for divine punishment?" "Yes. The Tao Master is the head of the divine Tao sect and is connected to the gods. He can invite divine punishment," Yu Zhitian said in a deep voice. Apparently, the messengers of the divine Tao sect were very respectful toward divine punishment. Tangzheng urged calmly, "Tao Master, don't be anxious. Take your time to invite divine punishment. I'm not in a hurry." The Tao Master shook violently. He was clearly more anxious than Tangzheng, and the incantation in his mouth was even faster. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of thunder resounded in the sky. A black cloud appeared in the sky at an unknown time, as if it had appeared out of thin air. The divine punishment is about to descend. The divine messenger's expression changed greatly. He shouted and retreated. He tried his best to distance himself from Tangzheng, afraid that he would be implicated. Yu Zhitian didn't leave. Tangzheng glanced at him and asked, "Why don't you stay away from me?" Yu Zhitian shook his head with a bitter smile. "I was the one who brought you here, so it's equivalent to me leading you into danger. How can I stay out of this?" Tangzheng smiled and said, "You're magnanimous and righteous, much more interesting than Taoist master." Yu Zhitian sighed inwardly. It's already a matter of life and death, yet you're still in the mood to joke around. Your mentality is too good. Rumble. The sound of thunder grew louder and louder. A bolt of lightning danced in the clouds like an electric serpent rolling in the clouds with a great momentum. Tangzheng looked up and said in astonishment, "Purple lightning. Is this the so-called divine punishment? Divine thunder of the 9 heavens." Yu Zhitian's expression became extremely pale as he said with a trembling voice. Tangzheng came to a sudden realization and nodded seriously. "So this is called the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. This is the so-called divine punishment." Yu Zhitian nodded resentfully. "Yes, when a human cultivates to the peak, they will attract a divine tribulation. This is a test from the gods, but the divine punishment is even more powerful than the divine tribulation. This is an existence that no human can contend against." Tangzheng fell into deep thought. He knew that the human cultivation system of this world was completely different. It turned out that cultivating to the peak would attract a divine tribulation. This difference was especially obvious. The Tao Master's expression became extremely gloomy as he listened to the two's conversation. This was especially true when Tangzheng didn't put the divine punishment in his eyes. This caused him to burn with anger. "If you think the divine punishment is only so, then I'll let you know how powerful it is." The Tao Master stopped chanting and shouted loudly, "Divine punishment, divine thunder of the 9 heavens." Boom! The sound of thunder drowned out the Tao Master's voice as a bolt of purple lightning fell from the sky. The lightning fell at an extremely fast speed, but its speed was even faster. In a flash, the lightning covered the mountain peak as if it wanted to destroy it. The Tao Master's eyes flickered as he pointed at Tang Zheng. The divine thunder of the nine heavens was guided and flew towards Tang Jing and Yu Zhitian. Yu Zhitian's face was ashen as his eyes widened. In front of the divine thunder of the nine heavens, he gave up resisting because all resistance was futile. I'm really going to die this time. His eardrums vibrated as if they wanted to pierce through his brain. His eyes were stinging as the purple lightning flashed and blinded him. However, he did his best to open his eyes. Even if he was going to die, he had to face it head-on. Tang Zheng glanced at Yu Zhitian and raised the hidden profound sword. He stepped into the air and walked towards the divine thunder of the nine heavens. His clothes fluttered in the wind. Under the divine thunder of the nine heavens, he seemed extremely small and weak, like an ant trying to shake a tree. Many people sighed. This kind of outstanding talent had died just like that. It was really a pity. He could only blame himself for underestimating the strength of the Shinto sect. The true killing weapon of the Shinto sect was the divine punishment. In the world, only the Tao Master could invite the divine punishment. This was also the source of his prestige. The Tao Master's eyes were full of splendor. There was no doubt that Tang Zheng made him feel fear. However, after inviting the divine punishment, his confidence had increased greatly and his fear had disappeared. On the contrary, because of this matter, his prestige had increased again. In the world, no one would dare to challenge his prestige. Die, quickly die. Haha, I really don't know where a lunatic like you came from. You actually said that you've cultivated to become a god. Do you think I'll be fooled by you? You can fool others, but you definitely can't fool me. The Tao Master was proud, and his eyes were full of anticipation. He looked at the thin figure walking towards the divine thunder of the nine heavens, as if he was looking at a dead man. Suddenly, a sword light bloomed from Tang Zheng's hand. The hidden profound sword's power was unleashed to the extreme. The sacred pattern lit up, and the extremely simple sacred pattern contained a mysterious power. The sacred pattern and the sword light merged into one and pierced through the world. Boom! The lightning and the divine thunder of the nine heavens met. The net of lightning in the sky was split into two. Countless lightning surrounded the hidden profound sword and crackled, continuously attacking the sword. The sacred pattern trembled violently as if it was going to collapse at any time. Tang Zheng's eyes brightened. He felt the power of the divine thunder of the nine heavens from the hidden profound sword. It was indeed extraordinary. No mortal would be able to survive under the divine thunder of the nine heavens. The relationship between the Shinto sect and the divine race is very deep. Otherwise, it would not be able to invite the divine thunder of the nine heavens. This is no longer the power of a human, but the power of the divine race. Moreover, this is not a power that ordinary divine race can use. The divine thunder of the nine heavens is rare. I can't waste it. This is the best way to refine a magic treasure. Tang Zheng looked at the continuously flashing purple lightning on the hidden profound sword and had a flash of inspiration as he came up with an excellent idea. The hidden profound sword was a divine weapon with sacred patterns. However, it was far from the limit of a magic treasure. There was still room for improvement. Chapter 1887. The nine heavens' divine thunder was invincible, and the purple lightning continued to temper the hidden sword. Tang Zheng was in the middle of the electric net, but the hidden sword attracted most of the nine heavens' divine thunder, and the rest was not enough to hurt Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng stared at the hidden sword and saw the two extremely simple divine runes flickering under the tempering of the nine heavens' divine thunder. Gradually, changes began to appear. The two divine runes moved closer to each other and finally merged into one, becoming a single divine rune. The hidden sword finally made a breakthrough and leveled up. The hidden sword with one divine rune was much more powerful than the one with two divine runes, which was a qualitative leap. Tang Zheng was overjoyed, and he stared at the hidden sword with burning eyes and shouted, "Hidden sword, break!" The divine rune suddenly lit up like a star. Swoosh! The divine rune flew from the hidden sword and turned into a ray of sword light that pierced through the sky, and with a whoosh, It slashed at the nine heavens' divine thunder. Rumble. The nine heavens' divine thunder seemed to feel threatened, and thunder rumbled. However, in the next second, the sword light pierced through the nine heavens' divine thunder, splitting the black cloud into two. As for the nine heavens' divine thunder in the sky, it disappeared as if it had never been there. The sword light did not diminish, and with a puff, it went straight through the Way Master's body. The power of the sword light was too strong. The Taoist master only had time to let out a scream. In the next moment, he was turned into dust and disappeared completely from the world. The world fell silent, and there was no sound. All the oracles were like stone men, and they stared blankly at the scene, and their minds had stopped thinking. That was the nine heavens' divine thunder, which was enough to destroy any existence. However, in front of this person, the nine heavens' divine thunder was defeated, and even the Way Master's soul was destroyed. This was beyond their knowledge, and they were at a loss. Tang Zheng withdrew his gaze from the distance and gently stroked the hidden sword with his finger. The hidden sword vibrated excitedly, and a divine rune flickered, which was very eye-catching. The divine thunder of the nine heavens is indeed extraordinary. I really want to thank you. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a smile. Without a doubt, the nine heavens' divine thunder was a technique of the Shin clan. Now that he had the hidden sword with a saintly pattern, he was no longer afraid of the nine heavens' divine thunder. As if waking up from a dream, Yu Zhitian turned his head with difficulty and looked at Tang Zheng in a daze. His throat moved, but he couldn't say a single word. Tang Zheng smiled and patted him on the shoulder. How do you feel? Yu Zhitian's emotions were complicated. He was both shocked and relieved. In short, there were no words that could describe his current feelings. It'll be fine once you get used to it. Tang Zheng was not surprised and encouraged him. Yu Zhitian nodded with a bitter smile. Adapt? How could he adapt? Not to mention Yu Zhitian's mixed feelings, the other divine envoys regained their senses. Their hearts were filled with anxiety and uneasiness. When they saw Tang Zheng looking at them, they lowered their heads, not knowing what fate awaited them. After all, in front of Tang Zheng, all the divine envoys added together would not be able to withstand a single blow. Do you all want to live? Tang Zheng slowly opened his mouth and asked the question that all the divine envoys were most concerned about. Yes, all the divine envoys nodded at the same time. The so-called loyal subjects of the Shen clan were unable to withstand a single blow and were thrown beyond the nine heavens. As long as you all want to live, then that's fine. From now on, he will be your Tao master. As long as you respect him as your master, then you can live. Tang Zheng pointed at Yu Zhitian and said, What? Yu Zhitian suddenly raised his head. He was caught off guard as he stared blankly at Tang Zheng and blurted out, Absolutely not. What right do I have to be a Tao master? Tang Zheng said indifferently, If I say you can, then you can. Does anyone object? The divine envoys suppressed their fluctuating emotions and advised righteously, Zhitian, we already knew that you were not a fish in a pond and that you would transform into a dragon upon encountering a storm. Today, our judgment has been confirmed. If you don't become a Tao master, then who else can? Yes, you are our Tao master. Greetings, Tao master. One by one, the divine envoys knelt down towards Yu Zhitian and shouted in unison. Yu Zhitian felt as if he was dreaming as he looked at the kneeling divine envoys and then at the smiling Tang Zheng. He was at a loss as to what to do. Tang Zheng laughed loudly as he patted Yu Zhitian's shoulder and said encouragingly, I believe that in your hands, the Shinto sect will truly flourish and reach a new height. Yu Zhitian sighed as he understood that he could no longer refuse. Since things had already reached this point, then there was no harm in thinking on the bright side. After all, he had never had such a young Tao master before. Moreover, he had Tang Zheng's help. As long as he planned carefully, it was not impossible for him to achieve great things. He believed that Tang Zheng had his own reasons for doing this, and that he only needed to wait patiently for what would happen next. Tao Master, take me on a tour of the Shinto sect, Tang Zheng said with a smile. Yu Zhitian nodded and led the way. Please follow me. As he walked forward, he introduced, the Shinto sect has a total of 9 peaks, 8 of which surround and protect the main peak. The main peak is where the Tao Master resides while the other divine envoys live on the 8 peaks. Each peak is managed by a mountain lord who listens to the Tao Master. Tangjing nodded inwardly as he looked around. Indeed, there were 8 peaks surrounding and protecting the main peak. As for the 8 mountain lords, it was unknown how many of them were still alive. But this was not important. Let's go to the main peak first. Yu Zhitian led Tangjung to the top of the main peak. On top of the main peak stood a temple, which Tangjung had already seen before. What's in the temple? Tangjung asked curiously. The temple enshrines a heavenly deity. Heavenly deity? Tangjung said that it must be a certain divine race. Thus, he strode into the temple. As soon as he entered, the aura around him was completely different. There was too much power of faith. Tangjung's eyes lit up. The power of faith in the temple was extremely dense. It was like air everywhere, far more than the power of faith above the temple. Tangjung walked through the power of faith and asked, "Did you know that there is so much power of faith in the temple?" "Today is the first time I've heard of power of faith," Yu Zhitian said bitterly. Tangjung nodded with a smile. "The previous Tao Master hid too much from you. Does this power of faith really have such a great effect?" Yu Zhitian asked curiously. "Of course, it is extremely important to the divine race. It is the source of their power. Unfortunately, not only did they enslave you, they also deceived you." Tangjung shook his head and sighed. "Then, is this power of faith useful to you?" Yu Zhitian asked cautiously. Tangjung laughed. "Of course it's useful. Look carefully." Tangjung's finger pointed at the void. With a whoosh, a huge vortex appeared in front of him. The power of faith revolved around the vortex and gathered from all directions. The source of the vortex was Tangjung's body. The power of faith continuously entered Tangjung's body. Yu Zhitian stared blankly at this scene and muttered to himself, "This is power of faith." Roar. Chapter 1888. A furious roar came from the main hall of the Divine Temple. The sound was terrifying, but it was only confined to the Divine Temple. Those outside the Divine Temple could not hear this roar at all. Yu Zhitian's expression changed abruptly as he cried out in surprise. "What is this?" He had been in the Divine Tao sect for many years and never knew that there was actually such a terrifying existence in the main hall. He had only entered the main hall and sincerely kowtowed to the statue before, so he did not discover any other abnormalities. Tangjung said with a grin, "Follow me in." Yu Zhitian warned carefully, "Be careful." "No worries." Tangjung was full of confidence, seemingly not placing this threat in his eyes. Tangjung walked into the main hall leisurely. Whoosh whoosh. A gale rose up from the ground without any warning, blowing Yu Zhitian until he subconsciously narrowed his eyes into slits. Tangjung was used to it and said, "You want to stop me with a mere gale? Heh, divine race. Do you only have this little bit of means?" Divine race? Yu Zhitian's face was ashen. Although he had joined the Divine Tao sect for many years and kowtowed to the divine race every day, he had never seen one with his own eyes. It turned out that there was a true divine race hidden in the main hall of the Divine Temple. How was this possible? Seeing it with his own eyes, there was already nothing impossible. It could only mean that the original Tao Master had hidden many things from them. Tangjung walked straight into the gale, and Yu Zhitian hurriedly followed. This gale could not harm Tangjung, but it was not a small threat to Yu Zhitian. Of course, he did not dare to take the risk. The gale directly parted a path, as though there was a terrifyingly powerful force forcibly tearing it apart into two. The two walked against the wind and finally entered the main hall. A statue stood tall above the main hall, glaring angrily and incomparably dignified. Yu Zhitian raised his head and looked at the statue in surprise, saying, "How did this statue change? Its face was very calm before, but this time it's actually a bit sinister and terrifying." Tangjung understood as he stared at the statue and said, "Just now, it was you who was shouting and yelling, right?" The statue suddenly opened its eyes, and the light in its eyes shot out in all directions. It was breathtaking, but it had no effect on Tangjung. "Who are you? You dared to kill the Tao Master of my Shinto sect and destroy my Shinto sect." Obviously, The statue had also seen everything, but he did not appear to rescue them. This already explained many things. Tang Jing asked jokingly, "I've already killed and destroyed them. What can you do about it?" "You are going against God." The statue roared hysterically. "God?" Tang Jing chuckled. "Then what do you think I am?" Boom. A surge of energy spread out from Tang Jing's body, filling the hall. Immediately, the raging astral winds were torn to pieces, dissipating in a short while. This energy was like a mountain, directly pressing down on the statue of the deity. Creak, creak. Suddenly, the statue made a strange noise, as if it was about to shatter. Yu Zhitian was immediately stunned. It turned out that Tang Zheng had been preserving his strength all this time. Even when facing the nine heavens' divine thunder, he did not use his full strength. At this time, the power that burst out made Yu Zhitian not have the slightest thought of resisting. He knew that as long as Tang Zheng displayed this power in front of the Shinto sect's divine emissary, those remaining wishful thinking in their hearts would disappear. The statue's eyes were filled with shock as it looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief. It stretched out its trembling arm and pointed at Tang Zheng. You are also of the god race." The power Tang Zheng displayed was no longer the power of a human, but the power of the god race. The statue could not be more familiar and recognized at a glance. "I am not of the god race, I am a human," Tang Zheng retorted. "A human, cultivating to become a god. How is this possible?" The statue had a shocked expression, as if it did not dare to believe it even if it was beaten to death. "The truth is in front of you. Can you still deny it? Hee, you god race guarded to the death. But did you know that a human would succeed one day? This day has come." Tang Zheng's aura was like a rainbow, pressuring the statue until it gasped for breath. "Nonsense, a god is a god. A human can never truly become a god. If you dare to go against the heavens, you will be consigned to eternal damnation and die without a burial place." The statue roared fiercely, as if it was cheering for itself. "Noisy." Tang Zheng rubbed his ears and shook his head. "Since you are so stubborn, then you can accompany your god race and die without a burial place." Tang Zheng's figure flashed and attacked the statue, his huge fist going straight for the statue's chest. The statue lost its head out of fear, shouting loudly as it reacted in a panic. Bang! However, it was still unable to escape. Tang Zheng's fist landed on the statue's chest, causing stone fragments to swirl in the air. There were still traces of blood on it. The statue was suddenly startled and lowered its head to look at the large hole in its chest. It stammered, "You actually dared to injure me. You can really injure me," Tang Zheng casually said. "How can you be so stubborn and not believe my words?" "I am a god." The statue hysterically roared, stubborn and unrepentant. Tang Zheng speechlessly shook his head. With a flash of light, the hidden profound sword appeared in his hand. When the statue saw the hidden profound sword, despair and deep fear appeared in its eyes. Shwa! The sword flashed. Whoosh! The statue did not meet the hidden profound sword head-on. Instead, it was incomparably nimble. Like a crafty rabbit, it directly rushed out of the main hall. Boom! A hole was knocked open in the temple's wall, and the statue madly ran, actually wanting to escape. Yu Zhitian patted his forehead and rubbed his temples, not daring to believe that this was real. The statue was without a doubt a god race, but it was actually beaten by Tang Zheng to the point where it threw away its armor and fled like a stray dog. Where was the dignity of a god? It turned out that a god also knew fear and was also afraid of death. The many divine envoys of the Shinto sect also saw this scene, and their eyes were wide open, their jaws almost falling to the ground. What is that? The statue? It seems to be the statue in the main hall. The statue is alive. Why is there an extra hole in its chest? It seems to be running away. This scene had a great impact on them. It simply subverted their worldview. Where do you think you're going? Suddenly, there was an angry shout, like a sudden clap of thunder. A figure chased out of the temple, holding a sword in his hand, majestic and awe-inspiring. Tang Zheng. All of the divine envoys were greatly shaken. It was actually Tang Zheng who was chasing after the statue. This was too shocking. They looked at the statue to the left and looked at Tang Zheng to the right, only to feel that the sky was spinning and the earth was spinning, causing them to feel dizzy. Seeing Tang Zheng chasing after it, the statue was scared to the point where its face turned ashen. But it was so tall that it was like a live target. The sword flashed and directly chased over. The sword light went straight in and was about to cut him in half at the waist. Suddenly, the statue's body flashed and actually shrunk. The statue shook its body and became the size of a normal person. Moreover, it became a living person with flesh and blood. Chapter 1889. The idol transformed into a living person and looked around in panic. Tang Zheng chased after him relentlessly and shouted, "You can't escape. Why don't you stay and answer a few of my questions? I'll give you a quick death." The idol didn't even look back as he said in a trembling voice, "If I don't run, am I supposed to wait for death? Which rock did you pop out from? You're so powerful that you dare to chase after a divine race." The idol felt a headache coming on and was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He was a good idol in the Shinto sect and was worshipped with fireworks. This was a job that many divine races had done before. The other divine races passed this time peacefully. Only he was so unlucky to have encountered such a ruthless character. He wanted to fight the other party head-on, but he wasn't a match for Tang Zheng. He admitted defeat and wanted to run. Tang Zheng also chased after him relentlessly and didn't give him a chance to escape. What would happen to the divine race's face if a divine race was forced to run away? The idol really wanted to cry but had no tears. He felt that he had been wronged. One in front and one behind, they flew in circles around the 9 peaks of the Shinto sect. There were spatial restrictions all around the sect. With pursuers behind the idol, he had no intention of breaking the restrictions and running away. Thus, he could only run for his life in this small world of the Shinto sect. Sword glints tore through the sky and chased after the idol. Occasionally, the sword glints would leave a wound on the idol's body. The idol cried out miserably as if his butt was on fire. There was no longer any trace of the divine race's high and mighty aura. The others were already dumbfounded, their jaws almost falling to the ground. How can a god be so weak? The image of a god in many people's hearts collapsed. Tears flowed out of their eyes as their mentality collapsed. Yu Zhitian came to and wiped the corners of his eyes. His palms were wet. His mentality was similar to that of the entire Shinto sect. Don't look at how Tang Zheng had said 1,000 times that he wasn't in a hurry to see this scene. They truly realized that gods were no longer high and mighty. Gods could also be defeated and even killed. Tang Zheng looked at the subtle reactions of the divine emissaries. How could he not know what they were thinking? He had deliberately chased after the idol and didn't kill it in one blow. Of course, this was also the effect he had expected. Now, it seemed to have worked. The effect was obvious. Then the statue would have completed its mission. "Stop right there," Tang Zheng bellowed. His voice was like thunder, deafening and making many oracles with low cultivation dizzy. He almost fainted. Shwa. The hidden mystic sword broke through the air and fell from the sky, as if it had split the space into 2. It blocked the front of the statue, forcing him to stop. The statue was stunned. It stared at the sword in a daze. He had already determined that he was not a match for Tang Zheng. Seeing this sword strike, he was even more certain of this. Immediately, he despaired. The hidden, profound sword stood in front of him like a natural moat, making him unable to cross it at all. "You are the Divine King?" The statue looked at Tang Zheng in shock and asked, "Divine King?" Tang Zheng was moved. He was clearly in the Divine Emperor realm, but the statue had mistaken him for the Divine King realm. It seemed that his combat power was not weaker than the average Divine King. "Maybe it's because I not only cultivated the new Heaven book, but also the Heavenly God technique. With both, my power is stronger than the average Divine Emperor. That's why he had this misunderstanding." Tang Zheng analyzed secretly. "No matter what, this is a good thing." Tang Zheng smiled, but to the statue, it was like a wolf grandmother. Moreover, Tang Zheng's smile made the statue's last hope vanish. Because Tang Zheng had admitted that he was in the Divine King realm. As a Divine Emperor realm statue, how could he be a match for Tang Zheng? The statue was frightened and asked with trepidation, What do you want to ask? That's more like it. If you insist on not cooperating, you will be the one to suffer in the end. Tang Jing said with a smile. Why did you turn into a statue here? What mission do you have? Tang Jing already had a guess, but he wanted to verify it through the statue. Every few years, the divine realm will choose a divine race to come to each world and turn into a statue to receive incense and worship. This way, they can monitor this world and keep everything under the control of the divine race. Moreover, they can guarantee that the power of faith will be continuously sent to the divine realm. The statue said while suppressing his fear, carefully sizing up Tang Jing. He's actually a human who cultivated to become a god. He's even more powerful than me, a divine race. How did he do it? He's simply a freak. The statue secretly criticized. Tang Jing's eyes lit up. The statue's words coincided with his guess. He continued to ask, how does the divine realm choose who to be a statue? Although the statue looked high and mighty, it was actually a coolie. Because it was confined to a temple, it did not have the freedom of the divine race in the divine realm. Therefore, Tang Jing asked this question. The statue's cheeks turned red and it stammered, not knowing how to answer. There's hope. Tang Jing's expression darkened. You're not going to answer? The statue looked at Tang Jing nervously, as if it had completely thrown caution to the wind. It said resentfully, the divine race's candidates are all people with low cultivation and no power or influence in the divine realm. Ha ha ha. Tang Jing laughed loudly and said, as expected of coolies. The divine race's high officials and dignitaries, those with power and influence, don't need to be turned into statues. Only an unlucky person like you would be like this. The statue's face turned red and it lowered its head in shame. The others seemed to have long since become numb. No matter what shocking words the statue said, they would not have much of an extreme reaction. There were actually so many inside stories among the divine race. Many people had a feeling of sudden realization and stared at the statue without blinking, as if they wanted to know more about the divine race from it. The reverence in the hearts of the divine envoys for the divine race was melting little by little, like ice melting. Tang Jing looked at the statue's reaction and an idea came to him. He asked with interest, you should have your own name, right? The statue said, of course I have a name, I am Hai. Is there something special about this name? The divine race has 4 great surnames. All of the divine race come from these 4 great surnames, Yin, Ji, Si, and Hui. I am from the Yin family, Hai replied. So it is made up of these 4 great surnames. That is unexpected. Your status in the Yin family is low, and you have failed your duty. Do you know what will happen to you when you return? Tang Jing asked with a half-smile. Hai's face was ashen. He stammered, not knowing how to answer. I will give you a clear path, Tang Jing said. What path? Hai hurriedly asked. The divine race has always liked to enslave other races. I think it is time for you to have a taste of other races. Tang Jing's eyes flashed as he said. Hai thought of a possibility and shouted, you want me to be a slave? Can't I? Tang Jing asked. Using the divine race as slaves, turning the divine race into slaves. Chapter 1890. 9 Underworlds, Soul Fog Sea. Tang Jing and Hai flew through the air. Looking at the surging Soul Fog Sea, Hai's pupils shrank as he exclaimed, this is the Soul Fog Sea. Tang Jing nodded. It seems like the god race is very familiar with the situation of the 9 underworlds. Hai replied, I've heard of some methods to deal with the 9 underworlds when I was in the god world, and one of them was related to the Soul Fog Sea. The Soul Fog Sea will continue to expand, and one day, it will break free from the Hades Lord's shackles. When that time comes, the 9 underworlds will be annihilated. Tang Jing shivered. This was the same as his and the Hades Lord's judgment. The god race was indeed sinister. Who is it? The 9 underworlds army was stationed at the edge of the Soul Fog Sea. When they heard the commotion, they immediately surrounded them aggressively. It's the god race. A voice shrieked. It was obvious that the person recognized Hai. Hai panicked. There were only 2 of them. How could they be a match for the 9 underworlds army? He instinctively shielded Tang Jing and shouted, Master, quickly retreat. I will stop them. Seeing In Hai's natural action, Tang Zheng's eyes flashed with a hint of approval. He patted In Hai's shoulder and comforted him. Don't panic, there is nothing to be afraid of. I am here to find the Hades Lord. They will not make things difficult for us. You are looking for the Hades Lord? In Hai looked at him in surprise. Tang Zheng did not answer. His figure flashed and appeared in front of the 9 Underworld's army. He said solemnly, "Please report to the Hades Lord that Tang Zheng is here to visit." His voice was not loud, but it was very shocking. An invisible aura burst out like a shockwave that spread to the depths of the 9 Underworld's army's hearts. "Tang Zheng, you are back." 2 exclamations came from the depths of the 9 Underworld's army. One tall and one short figure appeared in front of Qin Lai in the blink of an eye. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded. "Tall King Yu, short King Yu, we meet again." These 2 King Yu were in charge of guarding the Soul Fog Sea, so Tang Zheng was naturally familiar with them. "It's really you." The 2 Ghost Kings stared blankly at Tang Zheng, unable to conceal their surprise. "I'm back," Tang Zheng said softly. "Take me to the Phantasmal Lord. The real battle is about to begin." Decisive battle. The 2 Ghost Kings looked at each other, and their spirits shook. They knew about Tang Zheng and the Netherlord's plan, but ever since Tang Zheng left, there had been no news. They couldn't help but worry if this plan would work. After all, the 9 Nether had once thought of many countermeasures, but they all failed. He didn't know if he would succeed this time. Who would have thought that the moment Tang Zheng returned, he would actually tell them that the final battle was about to begin? "All right, this way please. Let's go to Yudu." King Yu made a prompt decision. King Hai Yu stayed behind in the Sea of Soul Fog, while King Short Yu accompanied them to Yudu. In Hai was already stunned. He did not expect that the 2 Ghost Kings would be so respectful to Tang Zheng. One had to know that with his status, King Yu would not take him seriously at all. King Yu was an existence that was not inferior to a Tao Divine King. Furthermore, he had a noble status in the 9 Nether, above the billions of life forms in the 9 Nether. However, when Tang Zheng faced King Yu, he was neither servile nor overbearing. This made In Hai respect him and admire him endlessly. Yudu. It was still the same, but the minute details did not escape Tang Zheng's sharp eyes. He looked around and said thoughtfully, "King Short Yu, there seem to be fewer life forms in the 9 Nether than before. I wonder if it's just my imagination?" Hearing this, a pained expression appeared on King Dark Nether's face as he said bitterly, "You don't know this, but in order to complete your plan and gather so many new souls, Lord Dark Nether sacrificed many creatures of the 9 Nether. Only then can there be enough new souls." Tang Zheng's heart tightened, and he nodded. "Thank you for your hard work. The 9 Nether has sacrificed a lot, and I will remember it in my heart." King Short Yu revealed a bitter smile and said, "As long as your plan succeeds, these sacrifices will be worth it." In Hai stared with his eyes wide open, and they were filled with suspicion. He kept hearing what they were talking about, and his heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. Just as he was thinking hard, a majestic aura came from Yudu, covering the sky and earth. In Hai's heart skipped a beat, and he felt like he couldn't breathe. What's going on? He raised his head in a daze and saw a tall figure gradually rising from Yudu. In the next second, he had already crossed tens of thousands of miles and arrived in front of them. "Tang Zheng, you are really back," Yudu Master shouted in pleasant surprise. "Yudu Master." Tang Zheng nodded with a smile. "I said I would be back, so I naturally won't go back on my words." "Ha ha ha, it's good that you are back. Something huge happened recently, and I was worried about having no one to discuss it with. Since you are back, we can study it together." Yudu Master laughed loudly. His gaze lightly swept past In Hai. In Hai felt as if there was a dagger at his back, and all his secrets were exposed. In Hai hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to look at Yudu Master. Yudu Master asked casually, "Who is this god?" "My god slave," Tang Zheng replied. "God slave?" Not only was Yudu Master astonished, but even King of the Netherworld had a look of disbelief. Along the way, it was inconvenient for King of the Netherworld to ask about In Hai's identity, so he didn't expect him to be a god slave. Yudu Master clicked his tongue in admiration. You are still the formidable one, daring to think what others don't. You actually took a god as your slave. If the god race knows about this, they will probably fly into a rage and want to tear you into pieces. Tang Zheng shrugged his shoulders and said casually, if I don't do this, I will still be a thorn in the eyes of the god race, so I don't care about this matter. Yudu Master waved his hand. These are all small matters. Now, something huge has happened in the myriad of worlds, and you should have sensed it. What huge matter? The laws of space have changed, didn't you sense it? Yudu Master asked in disbelief. Tang Zheng came to a realization. So Yudu Master was referring to this matter. When Yin Hai heard this, he also raised his head. His expression became extremely interesting as he stared at Tang Zheng. He had witnessed everything and felt it even more deeply than Yudu Master. Tang Zheng smiled. So it's this matter. This is truly an unprecedented feat. I wonder who did it, but it must be a brilliant genius. Yudu Master was not stingy with his praise. Tang Zheng's expression became strange. He rubbed his nose and coughed, saying, actually, he only did something insignificant. Yudu Master's voice suddenly rose as he exclaimed, insignificant? Whether it is me or the Divine Lord of the Divine Realm, none of us were able to do this, but he was able to do it. You still say that this is an insignificant matter. I have to say that you are still too proud. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry, thinking, I can't praise myself, right? If I have the chance to meet this person, I must ask him face to face. How did he do this? There must be a story that no one knows. Yudu Master was filled with emotions and yearned to meet him. Short Dark King sighed. This must be a senior, but I don't know which world he came from or where he is now. If I can meet him, I will have no regrets in life. Immediately, Tang Zheng didn't know what to say. Yin Hai rolled his eyes and said seriously, the laws of space were changed by my master. Chapter 1891. What? Two cries of surprise rang out as two sharp gazes shot towards Yin Hai like arrows. Yin Hai felt a chill run down his spine, but he wasn't afraid because what he said was the truth. He straightened his back and faced the two, calmly saying, this is a witness. Master used his own strength to change the spatial laws of thousands of worlds. Hades' Lord and King of the Netherworld exclaimed again as their gazes fell on Tang Zheng, only to see Tang Zheng calmly looking at them. Is what he said true? Hades' Lord asked in a low voice. Tang Zheng smiled and nodded. Some time ago, I suddenly had an inspiration and decided to give it a try. I didn't expect to succeed so quickly. Hades' Lord and King of the Netherworld swallowed their saliva and said with difficulty, you suddenly had an inspiration and gave it a try? They looked at each other in dismay. Hearing Tang Zheng's tone, it was as if he had really done something insignificant, as if it was just an understatement. Waves of shock rose in their hearts as they couldn't help but recall how they praised Tang Zheng and couldn't help but blush. It turned out that this unprecedented senior was standing right in front of them, but they didn't know. Hades' Lord's expression changed as he became agitated. He grabbed Tang Zheng's arm and said, Tang Zheng, quickly tell me in detail, how did you do it? Tang Zheng smiled and said, this matter isn't difficult to explain. Hearing Tang Zheng's tireless explanation, Hades' Lord and King of the Netherworld perked up their ears, not willing to miss a single detail. Their mood followed Tang Zheng's description, rising and falling. This is what happened to this body. Tang Zheng finished his explanation and looked at the two, only to see that they were stunned and didn't come back to their senses for a long time. Seeing this, Yin Hai couldn't help but feel proud. From what Hades' Lord said, he was willing to pay any price if he could witness this scene with his own eyes. Yin Hai was a witness, so he immediately felt that this was a supreme honor. After a long time, Hades' Lord sighed and said, I always thought that I understood your potential and strength well enough, but now I realize that I still underestimated you. You have potential that none of us have. If it was in the past, I would find it hard to imagine, but now that the truth is in front of me, I can no longer doubt it. Tang Zheng said humbly, Hades' Lord, you're exaggerating. I only did what I could because this way, the God race's source of faith power will be cut off. That way, the God race won't have an inexhaustible supply of faith power, and our chances of victory will be higher. Hades Lord's head. Hades Lord's Lord. Hades Lord, I'm here to ask about the progress of our original plan. Tangjung went straight to the point. A smile appeared on Hades Lord's face. Although there's been no news of you since you left, I've been carrying out our plan to the letter. Ever since you left, the souls of the newly born babies in the God realm have all been modified by us. Now, most of them are already adults and are gradually showing their talents. It's just that the God race has always been high and mighty, and they're not used to lowering their heads to look at the affairs of mortals. So, they haven't noticed this subtle change. Tangjung smiled and nodded. That's for the best. Hai's heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. He asked curiously, Master, what's your plan? Tangjung glanced at him. He didn't mind telling him the truth because Hai had gradually won Tangjung's trust. Moreover, Hai's life depended on a single thought from Tangjung. I built a divine bridge in the souls of the newly born babies in the God realm and fused the heavenly God's secret art into their souls. In other words, from the moment they were born, they were cultivating the heavenly God's secret art. This is something that even the God race can't stop. In the end, the human race will become very powerful. I don't need to say more about this, right? Tangjung's few words stunned Hai. He was petrified on the spot. He had also heard about the heavenly God's secret art. However, the genius who created it had already died in the hands of the God race. In the end, the whereabouts of the heavenly God's secret art had become a mystery. The human race will become as powerful as the God race, Hai muttered to himself. Tangjung nodded. That's right. What the God race can do, the human race can do as well. The heavenly God's secret art is the key to this. Hai finally understood and exclaimed, This is truly a shocking plan. The God race won't be able to detect it because they view the human race as superior. They don't care about the human race's changes at all. Hades Lord glanced at Hai and said coldly, The God race has done too much evil. This has caused the heavens to be angry and resentful. The God race's fate has already been decided. As long as I give the order, those new humans who cultivate the heavenly God's secret art will fight for us and fight to the death with the God race. Now that I've changed the spatial laws, the God race won't have an endless supply of faith. That's why I think it's time for the final battle, Tangjung said. Hades Lord's face darkened slightly. However, we still need to plan for the long term. Those new humans aren't enough. We need more experts because the God race has countless experts. Tangjung naturally thought of his hometown. He had left behind the new Heaven Book, Heaven Stairway, and Heaven Palace. He believed that after so many years, he had nurtured many experts. He just didn't know how strong the God race would be. At that time, they would naturally participate in the battle. It was just that the God race was powerful, so Tangjung had to ensure that nothing would go wrong. Otherwise, Tangjung would definitely not allow his loved ones to participate in the battle and sacrifice themselves for nothing. Tangjung, I'm not sure about the situation of the God race's God race either. That's because the spies I left in God race have been completely wiped out. Therefore, before the battle begins, it's best to understand the situation of the God race's God race. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles, Hades Lord said seriously. Tangjung frowned slightly and asked, What's your plan? Hades Lord, didn't you take in a God slave? He definitely knows about the God race's God race's God race. Let him tell us about the God race's God race's God race's God race so that we can be fully prepared. Perhaps he can even be our spy in the future to make things easier for us. Hades Lord's gaze fell on Hai. Hai's heart thumped wildly as he waved his hand and said, Master, you know that I've left God City for a long time. I don't know the current situation of God City, so I don't dare to speak carelessly in case I affect Master's plan. Then why don't you make a trip back to Celestial City? Wouldn't you be able to find out more about the situation there? It's impossible for others to reach God City. Moreover, only the God race knows where God City is. Therefore, you are the most suitable candidate, aren't you? Netherlord stared at Hai and asked. Hai looked troubled. He had already betrayed the divine race. If he went back, he would most likely die. Wouldn't that be sending him to his death? He looked at Tang Zheng with trepidation. The decision was in Tang Zheng's hands. If he really made the decision, In Hai would have no choice but to return to the Divine City even if he knew that he would die. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.